Hello, welcome to another series from the Secretly Society. I'm Tom Davies. Back in the mid-90s, a group emerged from St. Louis, later moving to Chicago, and they'd go on to make some of the most beguiling and unique music of the time. They were 90 Day Men. In this three-part series, Tim Kinsella, a fellow Chicagoan and friend of the band, guides us through conversations with the members and other folks who were involved in the scenes and movements that they operated in, including myself in fact. Over 4 albums and a few EPs, the band's sound developed from angular post-something into elaborate, experimental, baroque songs, influenced by the world that was going on around them, and delving back into almost prog territory and 60s art rock, and beyond. To my ears, 90 Day Men were not ahead of their time, they were of a different world entirely. I consider some of their records to be the best I've ever heard, let alone have the fortune to work on. 90 Day Men's discography and a handful of previously unheard songs were compiled into a 5 LP set by Numero Group in 2023. In this episode, we'll hear about their early singles, working with labels for the first time, lineup changes, and how they developed their unique sound, and their first forays into touring.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the 90 Day Men story. I am your narrator, Tim Kinsella, and I will do my best to stay out of the way here and only insert myself when necessary to clarify things. So to recap, Brian, Casey, and Chandler were high school friends in suburban St. Louis that moved to Chicago together to start this band, and they were inseparable until they weren't.
Brian and I had a conversation with Chandler. Rob wasn't present for that conversation. And then we went back to that apartment and Rob was just like playing the songs. Literally walked out of his bedroom just like, playing the songs. And we were like, all right, well, that's that.
You know, I knew it wasn't about me, but I was still bummed. But also, we were in this perfect situation because Rob was a great bass player.
There was a transitional moment where we were playing as a 4-piece. We had actually written anything as a quartet. I don't think that we had. I think it sort of transitioned from me finding spaces in the songs that they had written as a trio. And then when Chandler left, we started to work on a new set of ideas, new music. I think it was really just a time for exploration, a sort of getting to know you period. Even though we all knew each other, we knew each other's likes and dislikes.
It just fit. It was like right on. He kind of already knew how I played, knew how Brian played. And so we got, I think we got like even a little bit more aggressive at that point, musically.
Well, I think Rob is a better bass player for that project. I was really attached to Chandler personally as my friend, and I kind of knew that after he wasn't playing in the band, we probably weren't going to spend as much time with him. So I think I saw that coming, I guess. That made me sad because I knew Chandler wasn't going to be around as much. But Rob came in all guns blaring, like he knew all the fucking songs, like I think at the first day. But ultimately, I think he brought a swing to it that complemented Casey's swing even more, and that was a huge attribute.
I met Rob in the summer '95, and he made an immediate impression. We stayed at his house in Kansas City, squeezing 6 of us into a very cramped apartment. It was a heat wave, over 100 degrees out, with no AC in the apartment, and one of us decided to make a late-night lasagna after the show. We all hung out with our shirts off. I fell asleep on top of my sleeping bag on the hardwood floor with Rob's 2 hairless cats crawling all over me. He was chain smoking, sitting in like a old-fashioned child's school desk. I woke up in the morning to find Rob sleeping, sitting up in that school desk with a cloud of smoke hanging in the murky air. Rob was a character that everyone knew and that knew everyone.
Rob is almost like Christopher Guest character level artistic weirdo. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he's like, holy shit, you can make a documentary about that guy. Just fucking follow him around with a camera and you fucking get into Cannes Film Festival. Very unique.
Rob was just sort of off on his own path. I think Rob thought he knew who he was. Like, he had the cockiness of youth, like sort of like a spectrum here. Like, Brian seemed a little bit more unsure and like shy of himself. Casey was just like, it is what it is, just solid straight ahead. Whereas like Rob had these like grandiose ideas about himself and this ambition, whereas the rest of us were just like, take it down a notch, guy. But then he grew into it.
He was the first person awake. I only know that because I'm also always been an early waker. He'd be like, you know, he'd find like somehow find like a nice place to get a coffee. He'd go record shopping a lot on tour and he'd be searching, he'd be like, I'll be right back. And he'd, you know, see a record store. Like Rob would know how to order sushi. You know, I mean, it just wasn't something that we knew, you know what I mean?
I mean, it was weird. It's still weird to this day. Another show that I was very excited about. We played a show in El Paso, Texas, and it was at the drive-in. And it was a memorable show for me, mainly due to the fact that a majority of the audience was brown. And that was something that was very exciting to me.
I think that there was like unspoken, but I think that there was a whole nother conversation that was happening with Rob, where it's probably no mistake, like I probably had something to do with the reason why he came to the Trench Mount Hang afterwards and then came in the next day, you know, like that kind of like signifier being like, oh, there's another black person doing this thing, you know. And so with 90 Day Man, I was listening to that language, listening to what was being said politically through 90 Day Men, what was being done with the knowledge that there's a black person doing it. Right. So it was a chance for me to look at a group of 4 guys making angular music with one black guy. I guess we all just have to find each other in some ways. We're out there, and as an older person, I had to be like, you know, whether it was like Bad Brains or Skeeter from Scream or whomever, for me, then I became that person for other people, and I'm like maybe friendlier.
In my late teens, growing up as a teenager and listening to a lot of punk music and hardcore music, I also found a very solid interest and was compelled by a lot of free jazz, a lot of, you know, at the time what was termed 20th century classical music, improvisational music. And I think a lot of that also had to do with the fact that the group that I was in my late teens called Secular Theme, we would play a lot of shows with groups like the Dazzling Killmen or groups like Dog-Faced Hermans, Casper Brotsman Massacre. And so a lot of my interest lied in things that were avant-garde or sort of left field music. Lyrically, I leaned into a lot of science fiction.
Probably as a sole black person in a underground punk scene, in the band meaning, then you have a vantage point and an aesthetic or something to say that is different than the majority of the people in the room. And all of those things add to the work and the intentions of the work.
Now streamlined with all members equally eager, they had the van, and hitting the road was the priority. It's often tricky to recognize the results of a decision, because these results often don't manifest as obviously or as quickly as one might hope. Still, nowadays, musicians often gripe about what's the point of a tour when you're not making any money and you can't count on a lot of people showing up each night. But that is, in fact, the leap of faith necessary to truly invest in your music, same nowadays as it was then. There may be enough nights that only 15 people show up that 40 people begins to seem like a pretty good night. But you never know who those 15 people are and what they do. And you do enough of these nights, slowly something begins to take shape. A band with a unified vision. And this vision gives them purpose, and this purpose gives them intensity. And people all over do begin to notice.
It's all arithmetic, and yeah, my biggest prompts is semantics. This blue chrome rocket ship. Hey, boost, boost. Why do you like this orbit to orbit so much? I try to finish all your sentences, so I can say exactly what you want to hear. You are a crown, I'm tumbling after. High with chrome rocket ship. Hey, boost, boost.
There were definitely, early on, there were definitely shows where we would play and there was no one there.
We played in Athens, Georgia to 100% no one. I think they gave us a 6-pack playing the show just to be nice. Once we got to California, it was like, this is amazing. The shows were better. People were oftentimes nicer in a weird way. I think that was a pretty big turning point.
So I can say exactly what you want to hear. Hey, where's the hey? Hey, boost, boost.
The next obvious step would be to have something to sell to these people that come to the shows. Something that would help get more people to the shows. Back then, collecting 7 inches was like collecting baseball cards. They were cheap to manufacture and usually sold for $3. They were a casual introduction to a band in an era when word of mouth reigned supreme.
The time when Billy from Action Boy was like, I mean, we had been talking to him and Fred Popolo, who was running Divot at the time, just like we really want to do a record with you guys so bad. And finally we wore Billy down, and then we got that second 7-inch out.
Of course, nowadays, most musicians have at least a passing knowledge of how to record themselves, and music has evolved in such ways that the recording process itself, production, is in fact the primary practice of many contemporary musicians. But back then, recording was something that you needed to do quick. The clock was ticking, and time is money. You had to play the songs well and quick, and you had to make production and mixing decisions on the fly that you were stuck with. There was no sending of notes for mix revisions that you wanted. But playing a lot of shows did not necessarily prepare one for playing in the studio. Playing in the studio is a distinct skill, and one that most people had very little access to. and this access was of course necessary to get better at it. And just as the bands were all learning as they went, the same was true for the upstart businesses that partnered with these bands.
And then we tried to record that record, and none of us were, I think, that happy with it. This guy was going to put it out. He came to Chicago, celebrated with us when it was finished, went back to wherever he was from, and called us the week after he was here and was like, I can't pay for this. And we were like, why did you put us in this situation? We recorded it at Electro Audio like the first fucking week it was open. We were like ashamed. Like we were like, we can't play any shows. We can't do anything. This is insane. It isn't until we get picked up by Southern and our entire advance goes to pay off that record. The record that turns into a 2-song 7-inch that is only released in English.
The idea of playing music in a group came from this place of camaraderie, and it was most exciting for me to be in a group with people that were friends.
I mean, Brian and I like have a bit of a brotherly relationship, as we're like, we can definitely fight with each other, but we also like get along very well. And same with Rob. We would all bicker at each other.
There were definitely times where we were cross with each other and needed to take space, but it always came back.
I don't remember much discussion outside of like general, like, let's record a 7-inch and let's play a tour this summer. You know, setting goals, like those things were discussed. And we were all into like, you know, making decisions together about what would be the best song or, you know, what is a cool idea. But we really were just like, as far as music writing went, we would just go to the room and see what happened. It's just like a different puzzle, and like the way it came together was less informed by, I feel like, our history of music growing up, meaning like we were just writing really instantly, like first thought, best thought.
I was like, oh, this song's in 7, and we're so like into making like just challenging ourselves how to write music and all that. So we were just like, every time we got to play, it was just like, it was fun, and trying to make it way more difficult than it needed to be. It was literally like, if we would write a chart that was probably better, we would like purposely like mess with it. You know, I'd call him math rock or whatever and be like, oh, we should make this part odd, or we should play this part 9 times instead of an even number or something like that. Like we could just not, we didn't want to commit to that, like, you know, standard songwriting form. So listening back to it, the first thing I thought of, I was like, my God, we were just like making it hard to make it hard.
During that era of like recording this record that didn't come out and signing to Southern, Andy moved to Chicago.
Of course, Casey, Rob, and Brian were there. And one day they were like, hey, we're going to have band practice. And like, mind if I tag along?
We were just like really starting to build something. So I said, just sit in and play the keys on it sometimes, and you'd come and rehearse with it.
From an evolutionary standpoint, I think that the addition of fourth member being Andy and the addition of the instrument being the electric piano was something that took us to a place in which we were able to step outside of and also explore new territory.
after we did the West Coast thing and how much that like invigorated us, we were like, next thing you do is go to Europe. We knew that Southern had a huge presence there already, and that was a big factor as to why we went with them.
Someone in England who worked at Southern, and England had their own label. They kind of licensed it from us and just put it out. And so that had kind of made its way around Southern UK, and then Southern US had seen us play and liked it. They were like, yeah, if you want to work together, we'll send you to Europe. You go to England. And that, that was just like, well, I'll do anything to do that. And the Europe thing was getting booked, and we're like, do you want to do this stuff with us? And Andy was like, yeah.
Andy was their old friend from back in St. Louis, a local legend known for his skills as a total ripper, a shredder. But as is so often the case, the same character traits that make someone a savant musician can also make them a little unpredictable in the real world. Andy was endlessly sweet, but honestly, I'm saying this as an acquaintance, not a close friend or collaborator, but he did usually have a look in his eye, like he was a little confused or on the verge of panic. Brian's tastes skewed toward the noisy and the simple, always cognizant of how to best contribute to the group. Casey's playing made his commitment obvious. He always challenged himself, but never lost track that the groove was always the central priority. And his fluid grooves never failed to incorporate nuances and details that made it clear that this was a thinking man's groove. Rob demonstrated a decisive understanding of how he believed rock bass works within the whole, keeping those lowest registers staccato, snaky, and emphatic. And though it's true that as a group they were often overwhelmed and got immersed in their own performances, Rob most of all came across as a man possessed and untethered from his day-to-day self once on stage. He could lay it on thick, but it was also totally convincing. But frankly, Andy could play circles around those guys, same as 99% of everyone else that any of us knew. He knew his theory and his musical history, and he could fly through his scales. While the others were in the trenches embodying their music, he was seeing it all from above. They honed their skills as individuals and a group, night after night after night, city after city after city, facing each other's discomfort and inconvenience as only true believers would be willing to endure.
They came over and toured Critical Band maybe a year after it came out. And we did a show in London, which was like a big Southern showcase. I remember when it was. It was February, must have been February 2001, I think. And it was 90 Day Men, this band from London called The Action Time, Dianoga, I think, and Les Savvy Fav, who were signed Southern in the UK. And 90 Day Men had to play first. So they went on at 7:30. There was probably 30 people in the room when they played. But I think maybe seeing Critical Band get played live was what made me think, oh, there's actually something a little bit more kind of special to this.
Europe, which was mind-blowing. We were there for 5 weeks, and those shows, just tons of people come whether they know you or not. So we were thought things were happening.
They had done, I think that was a crazy long tour. I've got a feeling that was like a 6-week tour in Europe. They were absolutely exhausted at the end of it. And I can't remember where Case and Andy went, but Rob and Brian both came back to my place. But I say they came back to my place. I had a room that was 6 foot by 6 foot by 8 foot, probably. It was tiny. And I showed them it, and they were like, there's no way we can stay. Yeah. So Brian slept in the van, and Rob came up. I let him have my bed, and I slept on this tiny little corridor carpet. But they were exhausted. I mean, they were absolutely exhausted at the end of this tour.
One other thing that really is like milestone in our musical careers wise, and that's when we got to do a Peel session. We rolled in there and like I said, we'd just been on touring for weeks. So we were good, we were solid, we were playing really well. And we made the critical decision to put a new song on the Peel session.
When we were preparing to go to Europe, we needed like more songs. So we were trying to write some stuff. And we wrote the first song that would end up on To Everybody with Andy. And it was that song, National Car Crash. Just totally different than anything we had done.
It just kind of happened. It wasn't like okay, let's write a song together. It just was, hey, here's something.
And it was like one of those like magic moments, like, hey, I was like sitting in Maida Vale, the studio, and I was like, every one of my fucking idols is like literally been sitting right where I'm at. That was a seminal moment, like in my musical career life. It was also with the Peel session, it's like, look, like it's all live, and they're like, just do the best you can. And it's like right from like the jump, I like knew, I was like, oh, like we've got it. That was also the first time I was like, oh, like I know how to play this instrument now. Like when we got that song on tape, we were like, this next record is gonna be different. Like, oh, we've got a lot more to do. Our musical horizons were expanding rapidly. I mean, we started listening to like more dub. We started, even like going out to see like DJs. There's like this whole new world of like rhythms and stuff.
To Everybody was written in like a 2-week period. Like we for the most part, like knocked it out really fast because we wanted to make another record, and we wrote it. We just did like, it was just like, let's just practice every day,
After years of concentrated effort, the band clearly the central priority in everyone's lives. They were finally aware that they were at their peak conditioning, in top shape. It was time to apply everything they'd learned and take another crack at an LP, this time written with Andy more involved in the process. And then, you keeping track of time here? Ready for this? That most classic of all 90s problems hit. 9/11.
You have just heard episode 2 from the Secretly Society's 3-part series about 90 Day Men, narrated and written by Tim Kinsella. You can listen to playlists of 90 Day Men's music via the link in the show notes, or go ahead and check out any of their albums wherever you listen to music. And check back in the Secretly Society's archive for other shows about Jason Molina, Big Red Machine, Jens Lekman, and our ongoing series Secretly Frequencies, where we quiz artists about their catalogue and learn a little more about their histories. The Secretly Society podcast is an original production of the Secretly Group. The series was edited by Ben Swanson and Caroline Vector. The project manager for the Secretly Society podcast is Coco Segala. Robbie Morris is their creative director. Look out for more from the Secretly Society wherever you get your podcasts.